Hello, everybody, and welcome to the now 20th episode of the BadMotoGP-Show. My sleep schedule and everything else regarding my sleep is totally fucked up. And if yours isn't, then you probably regret it right now because we had an absolute banger in Australia. I can't remember, to be honest, I can't remember a better race in recent history. And it's so amazing to see close racing in MotoGP again, and we're here to discuss all of it. We have our first world champion of the season, Izan Guevara, so congratulations to him. And also congratulations to me because I predicted it at the beginning of the season, or even before the season started. So yeah, your pick with Jaume Masia was totally wrong. But we have some good news. Jaume Masia follows bad MotoGPs now, so we got to root for him now when he moves back to Leopard. And yeah, so how do you enjoy the races?
Oh, hello everybody. It is bloody good to be back. Leo's absolutely right. My sleep schedule is just on a subhuman level now. It's just non-existent. But you know what? It was worth it. Jesus, Phillip Island is my favorite track ever. I mean, I have missed it so much. There's a little bit of my soul that was missing for the last 3 years since we have been away from Australia, since we've been away from Phillip Island. And that piece of my soul has returned, Leo, because this was one of the best races I've ever seen. And we see some good races a lot of the time, but this was on a just majestic level of greatness. Perfect coastal conditions, perfect even racing. And we got one of the best results of the last 4 or 5 years. It was just from beginning to end, it was perfect. Australia, I love you. I thank you for giving us Phillip Island. And I promise you, next year, I'm going to do everything in my power to go to Phillip Island because we must go there, Leo. If we have to crowdfund it, if we've got to get the people behind us, we must be at Phillip Island next year because that was just epic.
I hate the winter so much that my dream would be to move to Spain over the winter period because it's like nice and cozy, 15 degrees out there. Last year when we went to Barcelona to meet Remy, it was January. I had my winter coat with me and it was like 10 degrees with sunshine. It was amazing. But Spain would be cool and a little bit cheaper. But my absolute dream would be to go over to Australia, like to Melbourne, Sydney, or whatever, over the winter. And because, yeah, it's a fucking cool country and I would love to visit. I heard so many great stories about Australia. I've met Remy, I've met Joel Kelso, both amazing human beings. And yeah, they have the fucking best track in the world right now because like when I when I remember great races, let's say Mugello this year was an absolute banger and Aragon 2020, but we didn't have Phillip Island and all the other overseas races for 3 years now. The last time was 2019. And sometimes you have to lose something to truly appreciate it. And Phillip Island was one of those tracks. I mean, it's totally refreshing to see another track on the screen. I like it very much. I liked it in Motegi. I liked it in Thailand and again in Phillip Island. But the racing in Phillip Island was absolutely brilliant in all three classes. It delivered um, such a great race that I would like to see double headers in Phillip Island now. And yeah, it's so amazing, and we truly missed it. Like Aragon 2020 was a special race where Marcus and Pecco Bagnaia battled it out, and Mugello was a special race, but we we don't have many of those absolute classics anymore because of aero, because of ride height devices, because of tire pressure, and so on. But it was like a Moto3 race on MotoGP bikes, a little bit like what was it as in 2018, I believe. Yeah, it was special.
Yeah, I mean, Phillip Island is just on a level that is above any other race. I mean, Dorna, if one day you listen to this, if you have any sense and you listen to the words that we are saying to you, take the French Grand Prix, take any of the other European races you want, and just give us Phillip Island. Just give us it 2 times, give us it 3 times. I don't care if I have to sit up till 4 in the morning because that is worth it. That is how brilliant this race was. And like you said, Leo, I honestly couldn't have said it any better. You know, we deal with this bullshit of aero and tires and all these kind of issues throughout the year. And this is the one race in the year where none of it mattered. And it was so brilliant to see it again. It was so refreshing. And I cannot wait to break down this weekend because it was epic from beginning to end.
Yeah, I have a theory regarding this. As far as I'm concerned, it's spring right now in Phillip Island. And usually when we go to Phillip Island, we have cooler conditions. We have a lot of wind picking up. And yeah, we even had some rain this morning in Phillip Island. And all of this, I believe, contributed to the fact that MotoGP was closer because the tires weren't overheating as much. You could push, you could overtake, and also the characteristics of the track where you don't have many hard braking zones. You have it like in turn 4 and turn 10, but it's in general, it's a very flowing type of circuit where you can take many different lines. And when you like Alex Rins, perfect example in turn 2, he was pushing really hard on the right side of his rear tire through turn 1 and into turn 2. He was so fast, and you could see people going a little bit wider, then people going up the inside, and even on the exit there were so many overtakes. You usually don't see this anymore in MotoGP. So the characteristics and also the temperatures, I believe, played a huge part in it, that MotoGP was so close. And yeah, it's amazing. I want to see more of it. I can't wait for next year.
I can't wait already. And it's only been, what, 12 hours since it's been over. But yeah, you make an excellent point. And I think, if I'm not wrong, because obviously, as you all know by now, I watch the BT Sport broadcast. I know you watch the DAZN broadcast. And the guys on the BT Sport broadcast did say, because obviously they were there in Phillip Island, obviously with the weather being a lot crisper and a lot cooler, there were much less conditions affecting the tires throughout the race. And I think it just allowed everybody to push so much better and to just throw the worries about tires out of the window. And it was so great to see. It really, really was. It was nice to see nearly every, well, I mean, unless you're some riders who we'll talk about later on, it was nice to see nearly all the riders just having fun for once and just having a really fun flowing race. And that was the kind of race that suited that Suzuki to a T, an open flowing racetrack where Alex Rins, who is one of the best at it, you know, he always has been one of the best at just flowing up the inside and letting the bike do the rest. It was just such a brilliant weekend. It really was.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider that Suzuki is exiting MotoGP at the end of the season, basically everybody in this team at a certain point this year didn't know about their future. This victory means so much more than just a normal victory, I would say. Like,
Oh yeah.
I mean, Silverstone 2019 is a good example because Alex Rins won there as well, or in 2020 in Aragon, you know? It's always special to win in MotoGP, of course. But when you do it like this, when basically everybody is doing it one last time together, I believe it's much more intense for the team, and they truly deserve it, because today showed how fucking good the Suzuki is. I mean,
Oh,
you have a bike which is very, very rideable in through fast corners, has very, very good handling, very good turning. But also you saw the Suzuki holding its own on the straight. And it's not necessarily like a long straight like Mugello, but it's a straight where you have a lot of speed because the last turns are very fast and the first turn is very fast. And you saw Pecco Bagnaia on his Ducati. He was very, very strong on the straight, and a lot of Ducatis like passing Fabio by like it's nothing. And the Suzuki held its ground. Very, very good engine, as we said, all season, and this is basically what Yamaha needs. And also you have Alex Rins, who's like famous for one or two absolutely brilliant races in a season. So yeah, I'm very happy for him and Suzuki when you consider everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we discussed this extensively when the news was released about Suzuki unfortunately no longer participating in MotoGP after this season. And it was such because Suzuki are a great team. They always have been, and they definitely have got one of the best bikes on the grid. You know, we have sung their praises in that regard, I think fairly so. But it was so nice to see their team just celebrating in such a poignant way. You could see how much it meant to them all. And I'm really, really going to miss Suzuki being in the paddock. I think ever since they rejoined I think they rejoined in 2015 into the MotoGP paddock.
I believe it
Um,
was 14, but some along the line, I don't care.
yeah, whenever they rejoined, I was delighted that they were back because Suzuki belong in MotoGP. Their heritage, the likes of Barry Sheen, Cecchinelli, riders like this, their heritage, even Kevin Schwantz, they belong in MotoGP. And it was such a heartbreaker to see, unfortunately, due to circumstances outside their control, that the team will no longer be able to compete. And it is my genuine, fervent hope that one day they do return because they're such a great part of the paddock. You know, Joan Mir, Alex Rins, great riders. One of them's a world champion. Their team have always been brilliant. They've always worked well on the bike. And they're anytime they've ever had a victory, it's always been a great victory as well. Austin, Silverstone, Phillip Island, all the others. It's just been brilliant, and I will really, really miss Suzuki, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a billionaire, I would buy Suzuki for like 50 million or something, just a MotoGP project. Rename it as the Bad MotoGP Racing Team, put Remy Gardner and Pedro Acosta on it, and live my life for the next 10 years in absolute peace and heaven. And yeah, it's sad that they leave because usually when manufacturers leave, they aren't good, but they are fucking good. It seems like they're not, or not like they're not good, but not as good as they are because I can only imagine how much of a toll the whole news took on them. And this, I mean, when you remember the first part of the season, everybody was talking about Alex Rins as a championship contender, and
That's
he's that
true.
good. He had a little bit of bad luck, and the whole Suzuki exit, I can't. I can't even imagine how stressful it must be for them off track, the whole team. And MotoGP is a team sport. You can't do it alone. Fabio proves this every single race now because, yeah, he's just lost out there. And yeah, regarding the race, the way he rode the Suzuki around Phillip Island, he was riding like the devil. Simon Crafer pointed it out in the post race show, and or the post race interview. It was so incredibly good. And also, Mark Marquez had his 100th podium, his first podium since coming back. Uh, he was riding such an intelligent race, and it was refreshing to see different manufacturers at the top because especially now with Jack Miller out of championship contention, you you can imagine that he will help Pecco as much as he can. And Marco Bezzecchi did it as well. If Marco Bezzecchi was riding behind, let's say, Marc Marquez and not Pecco Bagnaia in this instant where he was second, for 100%, he would have attacked him. But he didn't. And it adds this little excitement, which is sad that A, we lose it in Suzuki next season, and B, it was very, very refreshing to see a proper battle of like, what was it, 5 to 10 riders
Even
battling for
six.
for the victory. Yeah, it was like six, something along the line. Battling for the victory, legitimately battling for the victory where you didn't know 3 laps ago, or 3 laps until 3 laps to go. This is 3 laps to go who was gonna win the race, and you could have gone for another 20 laps and nobody would have fell off you, man. You know, it's usually when we do this stuff, I have like a list of topics I want to talk about because there are certain things that happened in the race which are worth talking about. With this race, you don't know where to start and you don't know where to finish because everything was so amazing. And yeah, it's just like we could talk about Alex Rins for 2 hours and it wouldn't get boring. Like the battles he had with Marc Marquez, where they were overtaking each other into what's turn 1, 2, 3, turn 4, the heartbreaking zone, and the different lines Alex Rins is taking through turns 1, 2, 3, where he was overtaking dudes. It's so good, and it's so refreshing to see a proper battle. You know, it's great. It's absolutely great.
It's what the sport needs. It's what the sport thrives on. I mean, this is why I have never, ever, and I can say this wholeheartedly, it's why I've never been an F1 fan, you know, aside from a lot of other reasons. Generally in F1, where you start dictates where you will finish. And the reason I love MotoGP is that it's never been like that. It's always been competitive and it's always been who is the best for those 45 minutes on the track racing. And this was such a throwback race, which is why I loved it so much. First of all, before I get into that, petition to start a GoFundMe to get us to get the Bad MotoGP team. We need that to happen now. It's been spoken into existence. It is done, basically. No, but in all seriousness, you know, you mentioned Marc Marquez. It was actually really good to see Marc Marquez back on track, and it was really good to see him riding intelligently. It's the perfect word that you used. You know, I've never been Marc's biggest fan, as you know, but it was good to see him riding smart as well and not riding like he had to kill somebody to win or get on the podium. What Marc proved is that he can ride cerebrally, but ride intensely as well, and that's what he did. He did it really, really well, and he managed to keep Pecco Bagnaia off his back as well, which is a very impressive feat on its own. But all around, it was just phenomenal racing. It really was. And like we just said, there were at least 6 people who could have won that race today. We had Rins, we had Marquez, Bagnaia, there was Marini, Bezzecchi, and who else was there? Zarco, I think, as well. There was a bunch of people.
I mean, even Jack Miller and Fabio could have won the race, but
Even Miller and Fabio
unfortunately,
could
yeah,
have.
you know, you don't know where they would end up. And you know, usually when we do the show, I like to watch all the post-race interviews from the riders to get a feel where are they, what are they saying, because you miss a lot when you watch it just on the broadcast, you know. And this time it stood out to me that everybody, like except Jack Miller, but okay, and everybody was so positive about the race, because it's even Jack Miller was like, okay, shit happens, but it was a great race. Everybody enjoyed it. And Marc Marquez, as he said, he rode with a brain for once, you know. He was aggressive and never overly aggressive. There were some instances in like turn 4 where you thought, okay, this was a little late on the brakes and he pushed his opponent a little bit wide, but hey, it's racing, you know, you don't need to complain about this. But when Marc talked about the race, he said like in the last lap he wanted to attack into turn 10, and he didn't, because Alex Rins was defending so well. And he said like when you have 2 riders who are equal and the rider in front is defending as well as Alex Rins, that the second rider has no chance. And to be this smart in a situation where you're like, okay, I will take a second place. If Marc Marquez would have had this attitude a lot earlier, he would have had like 12 titles right now, you know?
Oh, no
I mean,
question.
he crashed in Jerez in, I believe it was second position after he overtook Maverick Vinales, with Fabio with 4 seconds to go in front of him and a couple laps to go. No way in the world he was going to catch him, and he still pushed. Or like in the warm-up in Indonesia, it's a great example where he was just pushing for no reason at all and putting himself in danger, and it seemed like he learned his lesson. And it's amazing to see, because the sport is better with Marc Marquez, and it's even more fun if Marc Marquez is on a non-competitive bike, which because he's such a great rider that he is the only one who can jump on the Honda after 100 days missing on a MotoGP bike and be competitive instantly. And he added like a level of excitement to MotoGP, which has been missed because A, of his riding style, B, of his personality, and of his superstar status, you know? And it's fun to see because he's battling with everybody. He doesn't give a flying fuck if you're competing for a championship. He's there to win. But if he's intelligent in this way and has a bike which doesn't allow him to play too much with his opponents, like in 2019, where he played with Fabio in Thailand, for example, or in Misano, shit gets boring. But this is like the perfect Marc Marquez for MotoGP, in my opinion, when he is competitive, but he's not too good that he wins the championship by 70 points in Japan or whatever. And yeah, this is exactly what we needed. This is exactly what we needed because everybody, the whole MotoGP world is ranting about ride height devices, about wings, about front tire pressures, no overtaking, and even the riders are, you know. And today was like, what could be more? I mean, it's a little bit this illusional to think every race can be like this because it's not. But more races can be like this, or like races with 2 or 3 dudes fighting for the victory can be like this if you allow the riders to overtake, you know, because the bikes are very, very close together. I mean, Ducati is a step above the rest, but everybody besides the KTM probably is very, 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 very on a level playing field, you know. And of course, Marc Marquez on the Honda and Fabio on the Yamaha. I'm not counting Darren Binder or Alex Marquez when I'm talking about Honda and Yamaha. So yeah, it's like a glimpse of what could have been with MotoGP if they would have done the right things with the regulations. And it's great to see that Mark is back. It's great to see to have proper racing back, and it's great to see that Suzuki had a great weekend. You know.
Yeah, well, essentially, this is the race that everybody in the paddock needed, with the exception of 3 riders. I'm not going to spoil it, but we all know the 3 riders that we're talking about. Even Cal Crutchlow and Dive Bomb Darren finished 12th and 13th. It was just a really, really good race for everybody in the paddock. Everybody was happy with it. Everybody seemed to have a really good time out in track as well, most importantly. And we had one of the best races that we've had in the last 4 or 5 years. And that's the biggest thing for me. Everybody had fun and everybody gave us a great race. They really, really did. And the last point that I'll make about Mark before we move on, because he does deserve a lot of credit for this, what Mark has proven is that he can change and he can evolve. He can evolve himself into thinking with his brain for once, as you said. He can evolve himself into riding very smartly without putting himself or anybody else in danger. He has proven that he could absolutely have been the rider that won 12, 13 championships. Because if he'd have had the IQ of Phillip Island, really ever since 2013, he wouldn't have the body injuries that he does, and he wouldn't have the psychological scarring that he does either. So all around, brilliant, brilliant race. There's really not a bad thing I could say about very many riders. They all seem to be really good, really on it. But Alex Rins was just on a different level today, and he fully deserved everything that he got.
Yeah, I mean, when you have such a great race, it's difficult to talk about what went wrong because so little went wrong. But luckily, it involved the championship, so we have to talk about it. And once again, it's Fabio. Once again, it's like the same old story where he is on a sitting duck, where everybody's flying past him, and he tries to overcompensate. And we were praising Fabio for a long time that he was taking 8th place, 6th places home, and let the other riders do the mistakes. But now we are in a situation where he had a little bit of bad luck in Aragon, which significantly took a dent into his championship hopes. And not to say it destroyed it, because he still had a 10-point advantage, but like Thailand was a tough one, a tough pill to swallow. And now again in Australia, where I can only feel for him, because he is still, in my opinion, the best rider in the world. And now his psyche starts to crack. It feels like he isn't mentally in a position anymore where he can take it, because it's enough to have a Mara of Ducatis against you, Marc Marquez against you, Alex Rins in this instance against you, Aleix Espargaro against you, which is natural. Of course, it's a competition. But to have like your own bike against you is, yeah, it's a tough one, and you can only do so much. And the beginning of the end was Fabio into turn 4, when he had to brake so late, because that's how to win with the Yamaha, because it is the sitting duck. You can't qualify in it, you can't overtake, so you have to absolutely murder the thing on the brakes, and it only can go right so many times, and this time it went wrong. I can't blame necessarily Fabio for it. Of course, he made the mistake, but like we said in previous episodes, he never should have been in this position in the first place, because he is a very, very good qualifier, and he is a very, very talented rider when it comes to having a good start and being on his A game in the first 3 laps, and Fabio is a rider who can have performances like he had in Germany, or like he had in Portimao. This is the Fabio that we know what he is capable of, but to have him in a situation over and over again where he had a very good start, but then gets overtaken a few times, especially like the Ducatis passing him on the straight. There was one situation, I believe it was Luca Marini, who passed him on the straight. It's like he was doing nothing, and he was flying by like he had, like it's Moto2 and MotoGP. It's a different world, and to take all of this and then to have to compensate for it on the brakes or in the corners, and sometimes it just went wrong. It went wrong in Assen, and now it went wrong again in Australia. And yeah, I feel so sorry for the dude, because he deserves better.
Yeah, I mean, Fabio's title hopes are literally hanging by the thread that holds his Alpine Star suit together. That's how limited his title chances are at this point. I mean, we've said this as far back as as far back as the European rounds. When this went overseas, Fabio had to get results, or the title would be taken away from him. And unfortunately, we are at DEFCON 1 now, where the title it is literally about to shift from under his hands. I mean, it's just unfortunate for Fabio. We've said this literally from episode 1 of the show, that Yamaha will eventually cost him, and it's cost him again. It really has. Now, look, at some point, Fabio does have to shoulder some of the blame. I'm not unrealistic, although I am a Fabio fan. At the end of the day, he did crash it. Yes, that's true. Whenever he crashed it against Aleix Espargaro a few rounds back, that was him as well. That is true. The problem is he has such limited power that he is being forced to take suicidal measures just to keep at pace with the rest of the pack. And quite frankly, how he won a title doing it and how he's kept up with it up until this point is miraculous in its own right. So realistically, if we're approaching this with realism, this was always going to happen. This was always going to be the story eventually, whether it was sooner or later. And unfortunately, it just is the story now. It just is. You cannot reasonably expect any motorcycle racer to compete with a bike that has a 15-kilometer-an-hour speed deficit over its rivals. And the problem is, we're not even at a point where the fact that the bike can turn better than any other bike is realistic now because the Ducati can turn now. The Suzuki's always been able to turn. Aprilia have got their bike together as well. Realistically, the only bike that isn't better than the Yamaha is KTM, and that's because we still don't know what the hell they're doing. But the problem with Fabio is I do feel like to a degree he's been hung out to dry. I genuinely do, because it's clear he's called for a year or two now, if not probably since 2019, for the power increase, for the rear grip to be improved on the bike. And Yamaha just have not listened to him. I mean, I can only hope for Fabio's sake that in this off season, Yamaha finds something. Because if they don't find something, Ducati truly might wipe the floor with the rest of the paddock next year, with the exception of Marc Marquez being back. So Yamaha have got to get their heads out of their ass and figure out what's going on, or they are going to be in deep, deep shit next season.
Yeah, I mean, the future is bright for Yamaha because they have the M1 for next year, or the M1 engine for next year, who competed with the Ducatis in Misano at least, but that's all the data we have. So you don't know if it works on every track like this. And I truly hope that also Frankie is in a terrible situation right now, and it's not like he forgot how to ride a motorcycle. Let's be honest here. He won the Moto2 championship. He almost won the MotoGP championship in 2020 if his engine didn't blow up in Jerez. And it's like all these riders, and even like Andrea Dovizioso and Kerr Crutchlow, those are good riders, you know? And when you have those riders on a Yamaha who is this fucking slow and is basically, the Yamaha isn't only a slow bike. Apparently, from the outside, it looks like it always destroys the psyche of a rider after a certain amount of time. You know, Valentino Rossi and Jorge Lorenzo are like the last riders on a Yamaha who has been really successful over a long period of time. Maverick, he was good at the beginning in 2017 when he joined Yamaha, but something happened, and it's Maverick. We always thought it's Maverick, but maybe it's not just Maverick, maybe it's Yamaha. And the same with Frankie. He had a great season where he almost won the title. Yamaha didn't support him the way they should have, first of all. The second of all, he had a bike which isn't competitive at all, and if you are always in the situation where everybody is competitive except you. With Frankie, it's worse than with Fabio because at least Fabio won the championship last year. Then I can only imagine how frustrating it must be. And now in Fabio's position, how frustrating must it be when you know you had like 100-point lead over, or 91-point lead over Pecco Bagnaia after Germany. And then, okay, he made a mistake here and there, but generally without his fault, he's now 14 points behind because his bike isn't working. And when you are in this situation where you know you have to do more than you can, you're destined to fail. And it's not Fabio's fault. It's also not Frankie's fault, you know? Of course, at the end of the day, they are doing the mistakes and it's easy to blame the riders. But if you look behind the curtain, you see that, of course, they will make mistakes if they are in a situation where you have to take risks which aren't, yeah, which where you have to take risks which are very, very unlikely to pay off. And Fabio had this incredible talent of walking this thin line of taking those risks and succeeding with it. But if you're in a gunfight with a knife, you're basically fucked, you know. And that's what a Yamaha rider is being. That's what a Yamaha rider probably feels like, you know.
Well, this is essentially what Fabio's had to deal with for 2 or 3 years now, as you just said. To use the knife gunfight analogy, because it's a very good analogy to use, actually, the reason Fabio has succeeded with his flick knife in the gunfight is that he's been able to outsmart those with the guns. He's been able to sneak around the alley and stab the people with the guns, basically. The problem now is the guns have turned into rocket launchers and they've destroyed everything that was around the person with the knife. So the
I'm
knife
sorry.
holder.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there. I would say those guns were rocket launchers for a long time ago. Those people with those guns were just shooting themselves in the foot and not aiming at the opponent. So the Ducati
Well,
has
there's
been good for a long time.
Yeah, well, there is also that, very true. But the problem is the people who were shooting themselves in the foot as well with the big guns, those people with the big guns have now shot themselves in the foot so much that they've ended up hitting everything else around them. And there's nowhere for the person with the knife to hide now. And Fabio started taking real damage because of the bike. And the problem is these people, to continue the metaphor, the people with the guns have started emptying the rounds now into the Yamaha. And like you said, Fabio held a 91 point lead not that long ago, and it has evaporated like the Qatari dust from his hands. And now he's 14 points behind. Now, Fabio is not such a bad rider that he just throws away a 91 point lead. You just don't do that. So realistically, then we have to consider what the other possibilities are because something has caused this to happen. And it's the same old story time after time. The bike cannot compete. Fabio Quartararo, every single race that he's gone through, even when he won the title last year, he basically has to play Russian roulette with himself every race to try and get an edge on his opponents. He has to brake later. He's got to accelerate harder into corners. Fabio has to take much greater risks just to stay competitive than, say, even though Pecco Bagnaia is a brilliant racer, don't get me wrong, to stay competitive with the Ducatis and with the Marquez Honda, you have to push the boundaries. And Fabio has now pushed boundaries beyond where they can be pushed. He cannot do any more with what he has until it's improved. And the thing with Yamaha is, I do think there was a degree of arrogance last year with Yamaha when we started this season. And they thought that because Fabio managed to get the world title, they thought, that's it, nothing more needs to be done. It's all good. And it's not all good. It's not all right. And Fabio was eventually going to have a nervous breakdown from having to carry this piece of shit bike throughout the season because he expects more of himself because he's a champion and a brilliant rider. And you cannot keep shouldering the burden onto Fabio Quartararo. It doesn't matter what rider you have there. You could have prime Valentino Rossi. You could have Jorge Lorenzo. You could have Mick Doohan on that bike, and none of them would be able to do it because that bike is not competitive enough. Something's got to be done.
Yeah, and when you ask yourself, is Fabio losing the title or is Pecco winning the title? I would say Fabio is losing the title, but not because of Fabio, because of Yamaha. Because A, when you're in a race and you're competing with always 4 Ducatis at the front, it's difficult. When you're competing with a knife in a gunfight, it's difficult. And I mean, I don't know what else to say because, like, when you remember Max Verstappen in Formula One, when Alex Albon was his teammate, he was battling alone against the Mercedes. And in Formula One, it's more important because of strategy, yada yada yada. And he was saying, like, okay, I need a competitive, or Red Bull even was saying, okay, we need a competitive second car, and that's why they put Checo Perez in the car, and it's working, because the same more or less applies to MotoGP. When you have a bodyguard like Jack Miller is now for Pecco Bagnaia because he's out of championship contention, he will protect Bagnaia's ass like it's his own, I believe. And the same with Marco Bezzecchi and Luca Marini. And I mean, Enea Bastianini is a different breed. He doesn't give a flying fuck about Pecco's championship. We had this covered after Aragon and after Misano. But yeah, when you're alone in a battle, it's hard. It's so fucking hard. And I feel very, 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 very sorry for him because Fabio, much like Remy, he deserves better.
He does. That's all really more I can say. I could cover the old ground of, Massimo Meregali this, Lynn Jarvis that. But at the end of the day, you've just said it perfectly. I can't add any more onto that, except for the fact that I really, really feel for Fabio Quartararo because he's done all he can. He cannot do any more. And I'm just praying he's a better 2023 and a better bike for 2023 as well.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the sad part about it, because if it really gets to the point where you're so frustrated that you lose confidence in yourself, and I believe Frankie is at this point, because Frankie's a brilliant rider, but for some reason, I don't know what, he's going down the same way Maverick was going down, with the exception that Maverick at least had 1 or 2 good races in the season. But how frustrating must it be? And to waste a career like Frankie's, or to waste a career like Fabio's, because what if Fabio's psyche, which seems like his weak point right now, like Mark Marquez's strong point is his mental strength, and it seems like Fabio's weak point is his mental strength. And when you're not supporting your rider in this instance, and you're just against him as well as every other competitor, basically, you're destroying not only your only hope of winning a championship, but you're destroying potentially a rider's career. Because when, let's say, Fabio doesn't get a better bike for the next 2 years where he has a contract, and let's say Fabio does good but has a lot of fuck ups because he has to take huge risks, and then you're in a situation for 2025 where you say, okay, I need another bike. Who's going to sign you? I mean, of course, Fabio's a world champion, and Joan Mir had this situation with Repsol Honda, but people weren't necessarily saying, okay, I need Joan Mir in my team, you know? And this is a potential scenario which could happen, because obviously it would be pointless to predict the future in 2025, you know? But yeah, it's sad because Fabio can be so much more, and he's limited by his bike, and it hurts me to see.
Yeah, it hurts me just as much. It really does. I think as a talent, just as a motorcycling talent alone, Fabio Quartararo is just such a special, gifted rider. He really is. I mean, I don't need to tell you why. We've seen why he is as talented as he is, but he needs better equipment. It's getting to the point where he's fighting with limited, outdated equipment, and you can't expect him to keep going out there on a substandard bike. You just can't do it. I wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. So realistically, Yamaha, just get it together and quick.
Easier said than done, which is kind of what's kind of strange is when you consider, you go back like to Aragon, let's say, and say, okay, in the overseas round, one rider will be winning the championship by collecting like a third place, a second place, and yada yada yada. Or no, it's like Pecco has like 2 third place and a DNF. When you say, okay, a rider would do this, you would probably assume it's like Fabio, or it's Aleix, but it's Pecco, and he's doing all the right things right now because he isn't taking those risks Fabio is taking. And Pecco is in a very comfortable situation right now because he's leading the championship, and if he finishes second both races, he will win the championship. And yeah, it's very possible for him to even win the championship in Malaysia, because when Fabio is competing against an armada of Ducatis and Pecco's winning, I mean, I could see it, and it's strange because it's always seemed like Pecco is like the one who cracks under pressure, and Fabio is the one who survives these situations like he did last year, you know. And it seemed to be the same story this year, but now we're in a situation where I would say all the DNFs cancel each other out, and it's about who's the best rider, because Pecco has how many DNFs? 5, I believe.
Something like that, yeah.
I believe it's 5. Could be wrong. I don't know. And Fabio has probably now, he has Assen, he has Aragon, he has yeah, Thailand is not a DNF, but he didn't score any points. And Phillip Island, now he has 4. So it's basically the same right now, I would argue. And now it comes down to who's the better rider. And even though I think still Fabio is the better rider of the two, right now Pecco is better because he has the far superior bike and he is doing what he needs to do right now. So congratulations to him for this. It's not his fault that Yamaha is a shitbox. And yeah, he isn't doing those, he isn't taking those unnecessary risks because he doesn't have to, and he's smart about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the last thing you can ever do is blame Pecco Bagnaia for the screw ups of Yamaha. It's certainly not something I would do, and it's something I'd like to think not anybody else would do as well. The thing with Pecco is he's definitely been very smart about it, you know. He's tried to manage it a lot better. He's tried to flow with it a lot better. And I do think if Pecco wins the title, which is looking very, very likely, he'll definitely be a more than deserving champion because I think as a rider, and I think we've said this before, I do think he is the second best rider in the world behind Fabio. Obviously, Fabio has to do a lot more on a shitbox bike, but Pecco's a brilliant rider, and him and that Ducati have always been a fearsome combination. And it would certainly be the culmination of a lot of work. It's something of a long time coming, if and when Ducati do it. But for, I mean, it is going to take a miracle for Mother Mary herself for Fabio to regain this title, because we're going to Malaysia, where I'm not too optimistic about his chances, if I'm honest. And then we have Valencia in the final round, and I can just see that being a massacre for the Yamaha. So, I mean, it'll be a great couple of rounds to end the season, but all roads are pointing to Ducati at this point and Pecco Bagnaia.
Yeah, Aleix seems like he's fumbling, or Aprilia in general, seems like they're fumbling the bag a little bit right now because they had some troubles in Phillip Island now. They had some troubles in Thailand, and they fucked up big time in Motegi. And it seemed like Fabio and Aleix are only in championship contention because of Pecco's early season incompetence. And now when you have like peak Pecco and you start to fuck it up a little yourself, now you see like that Pecco basically allowed you to be in championship contention because he was crashing all the time. Imagine if Pecco finished where he crashed every race, he would have been champion by now because he is this fucking good. And if you win 5 races in a row, yeah, no surprise you're supposed to be the world champion. But if you crash in 5 races as well, then it gets difficult. But if the other riders aren't capitalizing on that because they aren't consistent themselves, it gets difficult. And yeah, with Aleix, the overseas races should have been the perfect opportunity for him to play out his experience and to be in a situation where he capitalizes on the mistakes from Pecco, let's say in Motegi, and Fabio now in Australia or in Thailand, but he doesn't. So yeah, it's sad because I would love to see Aleix winning the title. It would have been the Cinderella story of MotoGP. It would be like the Nico Rosberg of MotoGP. But yeah, it seems like he's a little bit fumbling the bag away.
Yeah, it's a real shame for Aleix. You know, I know you've always been a big Aleix fan, and I've always been a big fan of Aleix as well. But if I'm being brutal and I'm being realistic, this is how I saw it going. I think with Aleix, it's really a momentum thing. And I think the longer that the momentum kind of lapses out, I think he generally tends to do a lot worse. And I think, like you said, especially with Motegi, I think that really just that was the pin in the balloon of his confidence. And I just think now this is where he fades away, and this is kind of it for Aleix. It's a real shame because it's probably the best season that he's ever had in MotoGP, and he has been outstanding. There is no doubt about that. But unfortunately, as we say, there's levels to this game, and Pecco is just on that level, and Aleix isn't so far. So it's a shame, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and if Pecco, let's say Pecco wins the championship, goes into next season with a lot of confidence and with maturity that he has right now, where he says, okay, don't worry, I will take a 3rd place, I will take like a 5th place or whatever. It's good night, Irene, for the rest, because nobody is beating Pecco when you're not on a Ducati, which brings Enea Bastianini into play, because I see Bastianini like as an early title favorite alongside with Pecco. And if Fabio has a good bike, of course, he's always there. But if Pecco is on his A game, and if Pecco is consistent, and if the Ducati stays as good as they are right now, I don't see anybody competing for the championship, like except Enea Bastianini, because Pecco is so fucking good. Ducati is so fucking good. And in MotoGP, we always had like these different eras. We had the McDouhan era, we had the Valentino Rossi era, we had like the Stoner Lorenzo era, then we had the Marcus era, and now the Marcus era could be over. Who knows? But we could be in a situation right now, which I believe is very good for the sport, where we don't have a single dominator who dominates the sport over like 10 years. And we could be in a position where we have multiple world championships, a little bit like with Casey Stoner and Jorge Lorenzo, where they were flipping world championship between those two, but on a broader scale. You know, if Fabio won last year, Pecco, let's say, wins this year, and let's say Enea wins next year, and whatever, Aleix wins one, or Maverick maybe, who knows, you know? It would be great for the sport, and I would hope that we can be in a situation where we have different world championships, different riders competing for the top, and a more level playing field. You know, I would love this for the sport.
Yes, same. I mean, realistically, if the Ducati's as good next year as it's been this year, we could have a Moto2 Remy roll season between Pecco and Enea Bastianini, where they literally duke out every win between themselves, and whoever doesn't win is getting second place anyway. That's a very real possibility because Ducati have, I think, 8 bikes on the grid now, and all those Ducatis are just unbelievable. I mean, when it comes to every Q2 session this year, it's nearly been a Ducati lockout every weekend. And that's not just saying that they have too many bikes. The bikes are really, really good. And if next year's anything like this year has been, I would not be surprised at Ducati domination, because you would have Pecco, who is the confidence of a champion, and Enea Bastianini, who, like you said, does not give a flying fuck about Ducati or their team orders or Pecco. He wants to be champion. I think you could see real Ducati domination. I think it's very realistic.
I mean, my ideal scenario would be that Aprilia fixes their braking stability, that Honda has a competitive enough bike for Marc Marquez to be in championship contention, but not to be overly dominant, as I said earlier. Then Ducati getting like slightly worse, where you don't have the Ducati in 2022 is an odd one, because at the beginning of the season, the GP22 was seemingly unrideable for whatever reason, which I can't comprehend. And now it's too dominant. Like, if we can get in the middle of this, it would be great. And a competitive Yamaha for Fabio and maybe even Frankie getting back on top. Then we have like a field where you could see different manufacturers battling for the victory, which is more entertaining than just Ducatis, and different riders competing for the championship. I mean, I don't necessarily see KTM going in this direction, because KTM always had this 2 or 3 race stretch where they were very, very good. And it seemed like they had those races over the last 3 races. I mean, they had a good race in Aragon. They had a good race in Motegi. They had a good race in Thailand, of course, because of the rain, but you know. And now KTM is shit again. You know, it's a KTM cycle. And which brings me to Remy. Remy had a great home race. He had a very, very good start, even briefly being in the top 10. But he said that later on his rear tire gave up. And yeah, this is just stuff you have to learn as a rookie. And but I'm happy for him that he had fun on the bike and was competing with the top guys in the points. He scored 1 point at home, which is good. And yeah, it's great to see that he at least has some positive experiences in MotoGP, because the KTM is an absolute shitbox, as we said 1,000 times. And my wholesome moment of the season, I don't care what the fuck happens in the next 2 races, my wholesome moment of the season is Pedro Acosta wearing the Remy Gardner t-shirt on podium. It's enough to make a grown man cry, you know.
Yeah, Remy and Pedro are just the goats. I don't care what anybody says. They are the dream team for the MotoGP team. When that happens, we're recruiting them. I don't care. It's going to happen. I believe in this. But yeah, Remy, really good for him to have a homecoming, more than deserved, more than overdue as well. Scored a point, really, really good. Shame that his tire gave out on him, his rear tire. It's a complaint that he's had throughout the season, but you know what? To his credit, he's just rocked with it and done the best that he can. And overall, really happy for him. One of the best photos of the weekend from the photographers, I think you might have shared it earlier. There's a really good photo of Remy burning out the rear tire and the smoke dissipating into the crowd watching. If not, we'll try and pull it up later, but it was a brilliant, brilliant photo. And I always want Remy to do well, but I'm really happy he had a good time this weekend. It was nice to see him enjoy himself for once.
Yeah, so I think now it's time to switch gears to Moto2, because in Moto2 we have an odd situation. Let me check the championship standings right now, because I'm not entirely sure how it's right now after this race. But when I remember correctly, Pedro Acosta is still in front of Pedro Acosta is still in front of Alonso Lopez in the championship. Pedro is 5th right now with 150 points, and Alonso Lopez has like 130 some points. But it's just a 20-point gap. And when you consider that Alonso Lopez just joined the Moto2 grid in Le Mans, we have like a weird scenario where Pedro Acosta is Rookie of the Year. Okay, cool. But Alonso Lopez is also. And that would be actually very interesting to know, what would the championship look like if it started in Le Mans, you know?
That is interesting.
Yeah, maybe we need to do an Excel sheet after the season to put this into perspective. But Alonso Lopez is so fucking good. I can't wrap my head around it, because last year when you were watching the European Moto2 Championship, Fermin Aldeguer and Alonso Lopez were head and shoulders above everybody else. They were so incredibly fast. But between those two, Fermin was the better one. Fermin was winning like every race, and it was his first time on a Moto2. Because before that, I believe he was riding the Superstock 600. And yeah, then Alonso Lopez and Fermin Aldeguer go to the World Championship, and now all of a sudden it's switched, and Alonso Lopez is so good, and Fermin Aldeguer is getting his shit handled by Alonso Lopez, who, to be fair, has a more of track knowledge, because he rode in the World Championship before in the Moto3 World Championship, and lost his seat because of funding. And now he's back, and he's doing everything that he needs to do to get a MotoGP contract. It's absolutely amazing. And he's had so many situations where he's been done wrong by his teams, by whatever. Even that he didn't get a Moto2 seat is almost criminal when you look back at it. And those people should burn in hell. But now he has a Moto2 seat, and he is doing everything with it. How fucking good is Alonso Lopez? He rode in front, pulled like a 3-second gap, took the long lap, and gained another 3 seconds on his, and not on somebody, on Pedro Acosta and Augusto Fernandez, who eventually crashed out. We will discuss this later. But man, how fucking good is Alonso Lopez? And I'm so happy for him. I'm happy for Speed Up because it's cool to have not only colleagues on top, but mostly I'm happy for Alonso Lopez because he absolutely deserves. He's such a great guy. And he worked so hard for me. He never gave up. The resilience tattoo that Elijah Spargaro has on his arm, Alonso Lopez needs this one as well. He's so fucking good and he deserves all of it. He deserves all of it. I'm so happy.
Honestly, it is fucking ridiculous how good Alonso Lopez is. I thought we'd used every superlative to describe Alonso Lopez and how he's been this season. And I just don't think we have because, my God, this kid is talented. He is so good. And like you said, last season, beginning of the season, completely undeservedly got his Moto3 seat cut out from underneath him because of a lack of funding. Thought that was it, thought that was the end. No, the Speed Up team give him a chance. And he comes in and he blows everybody off the grid. That is how good Alonso Lopez has been. Realistically, Alonso Lopez could be a real front runner for the title next year. That is how good he's been. And he came in halfway through the season, like you said, at Le Mans. I mean, this is just very, very impressive from Alonso Lopez. I cannot be any happier for him because that kid has been through a lot. He really has had his seat cut out from underneath him. And, as we know, in the paddock, whenever you lose your seat, it's often very rare to get back in again. It's a very hard journey to get back in again. He has got back in and he has deservedly repaid that faith in spades. He is just, yeah. I don't even know what more I can say because he has just been ridiculously on form. And Alonso Lopez deserves every good thing that comes to him because that kid is just, he is a star.
Yeah. Apparently, Alonso Lopez should have gotten the Gasca seat in Moto2. But apparently, Jake Dixon went to Dorna and said, hey, I don't have a seat. I need a seat. And because Dorna wants a British rider on the grid, they basically overruled the Alonso Lopez signing, which in hindsight isn't that bad because Alonso Lopez still got his seat. Alonso Lopez is probably in a better space right now. And Jake Dixon isn't doing bad as well. And as long as Jake Dixon isn't leading a race, he's actually a decent rider. So everybody won basically. But in this moment, it's totally unfair and it's totally wrong. And when you consider those things, let's assume they are true. That's of course only speculation. Then we have like I lost my point there. I don't know. But yeah, Alonso Lopez should have been in Moto2 way earlier and he could have been competing for the championship if he has been in Moto2 since the beginning of the year, or maybe it didn't because I could assume that he tries to prove everybody wrong now, and now he's on a roll, and I see him being a very, very serious contender for the title next year. This shall be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. The last point that I'll make before moving on is that passport diplomacy in the paddock is absolute bullshit. I do not agree with it for a second. I don't think you should. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Jake Dixon a lot. I really do. And to his credit, he's rode really, really well. But you should not be getting seats in the paddock just because of your passport. I don't agree with it. I think it is profoundly wrong, for representation and all that kind of stuff. If you're good enough, you belong there. If you don't, you're not. That's the way I see it. But either way, there's not much to complain about because Alonso Lopez has deservedly gotten a shot, and the spotlight is firmly and deservedly on him. He has been really, really good.
Yeah, on the other hand, you should get a seat when you're talented, and money shouldn't be the deciding factor. But unfortunately, we live in a world where money is the deciding factor. And I mean, it's difficult because let's say Remy, for example, gets a seat next year in MotoGP and Augusto Fernandez not, because Dorna wants an Australian rider on the grid. I wouldn't complain because it would suit me in this scenario. But with Jake Dixon and Alonso Lopez, I think it's wrong. But you mean it is what it is. But in general, I like it that they're trying to enforce different nationalities on the grid, because it's, of course, when you watch it from a personal perspective, it's shitty and it shouldn't be this way. It's sad for the particular person, but for the business MotoGP, it's great. Let's take Chantra as an example, or let's take Jack Miller and Remy as an example for Australia. I mean, it's good to have different nationalities on the grid. It's good to be able to market the sport, because when you are able to market the sport, you are able to earn more money, which is actually something Dorna doesn't know. So please don't tell them. This is secret stuff here.
Where's the Irish riders? I'm underrepresented on the grid, Leo. There are no Irish riders in the paddock. This is a disgrace. Dorna, sort it out.
Yeah, Casey O'Gorman. Casey O'Gorman in a couple of years, I believe, if he doesn't lose his seat in the junior classes because of funding, which is also a different world out there, when you don't have a couple of hundred thousands on the bank to pay for your junior GP, your ETC, or even the traveling in the Red Bull Rookies Cup. Everybody knows how much more expensive traveling got over the past 12 months. And when you aren't able to finance this, it doesn't matter if you're talented, which is sad. And the Red Bull Rookies Cup is doing the best they can, because you don't have to pay for anything except traveling and accommodation, but you still have to pay for it. And yeah, it would be sad. But let's say Casey gets his seat in the Moto3 championship at some point down the line. I believe he's like 13 or 14 years old. He's very young, but he is fucking good, man. He won his first race now in Aragon, and I remember at the beginning of the season he was battling at the Red Bull Rookies Cup with the top riders there, who are Colin Vire and Jose Antonio Reda, who are going to the World Championship next year. He has some serious talent. He just needs to be in the right place for the next 5 years, and sky's the limit, I believe. So yeah, but in general, I like it when there are different nationalities. It makes stuff interesting. It's a little bit boring for non-Spanish or non-Italian fans when you don't have like a rider to cheer on, because there are no German riders, for example, on the grid. And I still miss Jonas Folger, because he is, in my opinion, one of the best riders who never really got his chance due to health issues, and he never got back. As you said, when you lose your seat once in a paddock, it's difficult to get it back. And yeah, but
You still
it's
have Tom
still
Lucy, though.
yeah, but he's Swiss.
Oh shit, yeah, Lucy is okay. Yeah, fair enough. You got me in that one.
Yeah, but Marcel Schroeter, for example, but Moto2 isn't the same. Moto2,
It just isn't,
you
is
won
it?
it in a premier class. And also, Jonas Folger is a great guy from what I've seen online. I don't know him personally, but he seems to be a great guy. He seems to be a likable character. And yeah, it's sad, because when I remember in 2017, when he was battling with Marc Marquez in Germany, it's a different feeling.
Yeah,
But hey,
it is a whole different vibe, absolutely. I mean, realistically, like I alluded to there, because I'm Irish, I kind of have to adopt someone else's nationality to support a Premier class rider, which is why in the name of all that's Australian, I support Remy. I'm defecting to my convict side and going to Australia, but yeah, it would be really cool to see someone like Casey O'Gorman get their opportunity. I know he is very young, and that is a very good point. But in the future, to see more people from like Western Europe get their opportunity, it would be really good, because it would be nice to see people get those opportunities, and to see the old school fans of our sport have someone from our side of the world again represented there. But you make a very good point. It's all about it's just a different feeling when you see your own sort of nationality represented.
Yeah, I mean, even with the Dutch riders right now, you have Bo Snyder, who was a great talent, but never really got the results in the World Championship. But now you have Zonta van der Gerberg, who could do something. Who knows? I mean, it's promising. He's developing. Then you have Colin Vaya in Moto3 next season, apparently. If you if you believe the rumors, I saw this on Everything Motor Racing's Instagram page. He's supposed to join Max Racing. So yeah, let's see how this works out, because he is good in the Rookies Cup, and he also won in Aragon in the Junior GP. So yeah, it's a great time, even with Fabio on top right now as a French rider, and Pecco and Marc Marquez. You have different nationalities, and I hope that the American racing team can bring some more talent from America overseas to Europe. And I mean, Rocco Landers is an example where I think he is a very, very young and talented rider who should get tested, not necessarily straight into Moto2 World Championship, but maybe Moto2 European Championship, develop him there for 2 or 3 years, and then bring him into Moto2 if he's good enough, you know, because you have all the talent, you just need to get them into the championship. And that's why I love what Honda Team Asia is doing. What I had it. Fuck. What American Racing is doing. Yeah. I love this stuff. And even Rory Skinner next year. Rory Skinner is going to Moto2, a Scottish rider. It's brilliant, you know? And yeah, but still I'll be supporting Pedro Acosta next year. Unfortunately, Remy won't be in MotoGP. So I will have to pick another rider. I think I will go with Marco Bezzecchi. He reminds me a lot of Marco Simoncelli.
Love that.
Yeah, but yeah, Pedro Acosta with an extremely good performance, and Pedro Acosta also, like Inea Bastianini, he doesn't give a flying fuck about Augusto Fernandez championship. I mean, he could have been like, okay, I will take third place, Augusto take second. Here we go. I'm a good team player. But he was like, nope, I will take this. Fuck you, get the fuck out of here. This is my second place. And yeah, I love it. I love everything about it. And yeah, Pedro second place on a track where he's never been to. I mean, at least Alonso Lopez has been to Phillip Island once in his life. I believe 2019 he was riding in Moto3, or maybe twice. I don't know. But yeah, Pedro Acosta, first time, and I love that he's getting those different experiences with the wet qualifying in Motegi or the wet race in Thailand. I mean, it's not about a championship right now for him. I mean, Rookie of the Year isn't necessarily a title, so yeah, he is there to learn, and to have those different things in your rookie season is beneficial than to have it like in a championship deciding season.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I get on to Pedro Acosta's greatness once again, John Hopkins is missing a trick by not calling that team Team America. John, if you are watching this, please rebrand the team to Team America and just get Trey Parker and Matt Stone to do everything for the team. I would pay money to watch this happen, okay? And just have a massive eagle as the logo. All right, that's it. Rant over. Um, as for Pedro Acosta, brilliant again as always. Like you said, he basically reenacted the scene from 300 when that guy gets kicked down the well. He basically says, Augusto Fernandez, fuck your championship. I'm here to do mine. And he was absolutely right. He had a brilliant, brilliant race. Lord Pedro stands behind no man. He is at the front, and that is all that matters. With the exception of Alonso Lopez being absolutely, genuinely out of this world today, Pedro would have won that race. And, the season Pedro has had in Moto2 for a rookie has been unbelievable. You know, a lot of people had very outlandish ideas. I'm sure I was probably one of them about Pedro potentially winning Moto2 in his rookie season, even though it was never going to happen. But the season he has had has been so, so good. It really has. And to go to a track like Phillip Island that he's never been to before and get second, it's incredible. It just is. It is absolutely brilliant, and full credit to Pedro Acosta.
Yeah. To be fair, we both picked Pedro to win the Moto2 World Championship in his rookie season. And to put it into context, he went on the Moto2 bike for the first time and set the all-time lap record in Portimao, which I sent it to Remy, and he was like, yeah, he makes me look stupid. I was like, yeah, blame it on the bike. And he was like, yeah, that's probably it. So yeah. The 2022 Calex seemed to be very, very fast, But yeah, and he came off a Moto3 championship winning season in where he won as a rookie as well, And you didn't had a clear cut world championship contender, so I could see Pedro kind of winning the title when you take out all the learning experience, especially at the beginning of the season, and of course his injury. But let's pretend like Pedro didn't crash so much at the beginning of the season, and let's pretend like Pedro didn't injure himself and missed a couple of races. He would have been probably a lot further up in the championship standings. And with Moto2, it seems a little bit like nobody really wants to win it, or they want to keep it tight, because Augusto Fernandez had the perfect perfect curveball thrown to him. It's not really a match point because it's still just 2 races to go, and it would have been like 10 points or 15 points lead or whatever. But he dropped the ball. He dropped it in the end zone, basically, or not in the end zone, like inside the 10-yard line. He dropped it, and yeah, I don't know what's the deal is with the Fernandez boys, and 3 races to go and the championship early decider or potential championship. Yeah, I don't know what's the correct word for it, because it's not a match ball. It's not necessarily a decider. What is it? It's like an advantage, but how do you phrase it?
That's a very good question, actually. It's kind of like the ultimate penultimate decider. I don't Guys, let us know in the comments if there's a
Yeah.
phrase for this situation, because I don't know either. I All we know is that it's an advantage, but it's not the ultimate advantage. It's like a middle advantage, but then is there such a thing? I don't know. Help us out.
Yeah. And I mean, Ogura, he is doing the perfect thing right now, because he is collecting the points when they're there, and he's not making any fucking mistakes. And everybody around him fucks it up. Augusto Fernandez is in a position where he could get a very comfortable lead. And he's in a situation where he is the only rider in this championship picture who has some Moto2 overseas experience. And he doesn't take advantage of it. Ayogura won at home, still absolutely gangster from Ayogura. But in the rain in Thailand, where Ayogura never raced before, he wasn't in a bad position, but he wasn't in a good position. But Fernandez also, he didn't capitalize on this. And now he could have capitalized on Ayogura's mediocre performance, but he didn't. And at the end, now Ayogura is the one leading the championship. And yeah, it's a weird one.
It is a weird one. It's a very, very strange one indeed. I don't know what it is with Augusto Fernandez. I think it might just be more unfortunate timing of incidents rather than anything else, because I certainly don't think his mentality is an issue by any measure. I think with Augusto, it's just unfortunate that he keeps slipping up at the worst imaginable time, because he keeps slipping up at the point when Iagora is making up points. It's not like they're both messing up at the same time. But it's something he really needs to cut out, because it's throwing away potential championship leads, which in itself throws away potential championships. So Augusto has got to be much more managed and careful about this. Obviously, everybody makes mistakes. I'm certainly not telling him, to just be perfect all the time, because there's no such thing. But he's got to manage himself a lot better in that regard, because if he starts throwing away points, that allows Iagora back into it. And even though he's had a great season, a big part of why Iagora is still in the position he's in terms of leading the championship is because Augusto was messed up at the worst possible time. So if he can manage that better, it really would have been his to lose. But now he's let himself be in this situation where Iagora now controls the narrative and he's having to fight back once again. It's not a good way to be.
Yeah, and I like Carnage, so I would like Iogura to win the championship, first of all, because he would be the first one defending his Moto2 championship since Ron Zarco, which should be interesting with Alonso Lopez and with Pedro Acosta in their second season, where you could say, okay, they're now legitimate championship contenders. Then you don't know what Rabbit Aki Ayo will pull out of his head with Albert Arenas. Maybe he fixes him. And you don't know what Celestino Vietti will do next season, because Celestino Vietti once again crashing, unfortunate, but let's pretend like he finished all of his races in the position where he crashed. He would have been leading the world championship right now. And this makes it so sad, because I don't know what's happening inside his head. And it seemed like he almost accepted failure, you know?
If Celestino Vietti had finished all of these races he's crashed out of, he'd have had the titles sewn up by now. And that's just the reality. He has thrown away so many points. And it's not even that he's thrown away so many points. He's thrown away so many points from good positions on the grid. Anywhere from first down to fifth, he has thrown points away from those positions. And that's why it's the reason why you keep using the disappointed Valentino meme, because he keeps fucking it up every weekend. It's not like it's happened once or twice. Every single weekend, Celestino Vietti is qualifying decently and he fucking throws it away. It's just so disappointing. I can't remember the predictions we made, but I think in my own prediction I had Celestino Vietti as a strong title favorite, and he's completely shagged it. He's completely done it. And it's just, I can only hope he has a better year next year, because this is a year he is going to want to forget.
Yeah, Depression GP, the meme page, had a very, very funny meme. I laughed so hard when I saw it. It was Celestino Vietti on the grid, and then a raccoon besides it, and it was saying like, "Hello, fellow disappointment." I was laughing so hard, and yeah, this sums it up very, very well, because Celestino Vietti has all the potential in the world. And for some reason, he can't stop crashing. I don't know what his deal is. I don't know. And I don't know where it came from. I have no idea.
Oh man, Celestino Vietti lives in Spain without the S, because
Yeah.
all he knows is pain. I don't know if he's betting on himself to crash out every race or what the deal is, but it is such a shame, man. It really, really is, because Vietti's one of the best riders on the grid. And it's like you said at the very beginning of this, you made a really good point. It's almost as if he's just accepted failure. Like, if I crash out once, oh well, that's it. I'm going to crash out of every race. No, Celestino, you don't crash out of every race. You crash out of one race, you get it back together again, and then you go back to winning. Like, ever since Alonso Lopez came in, and ever since Pedro started getting back to the front of the grid again, it just seems like he has fallen apart. And I don't understand why. I don't know what's brought it on. But Celestino Vietti has completely thrown this world title away. And it's been a cataclysmic fall unlike any I've ever seen.
I saw Lorenzo Baldassari in 2019, and it reminded me a lot of it.
That's a good
And
comparison.
when you remember in Austria this year, Jorge Martin, he crashed out of what was it, like third position, because he wanted to try to finish second. I understand his mentality, and he was happy afterwards in the box that he tried it, and I don't understand it. Because when you're in MotoGP or in Moto2 or whatever, the first goal should be to finish the race. And Ai Ogura is the perfect example. It doesn't matter if you finish in 11th, if you finish in 7th, if you finish in whatever, in second or win, you know? But if you do it consistently over a season, you will be in a better position than if you try it every single race and fuck it up every single race and hide behind the excuse like, oh, at least I was trying. So yeah, you shouldn't be trying if you can't stay on the bike.
Yeah, it's like they say, it's one of the oldest sayings in the book, and there's a very good reason why, because it's true. In order to win, you have to finish first. And Celestino Vietti has completely disregarded the second half of that statement. I think he's so obsessed with winning that he's just willing to try and push through whatever it takes in order to do it. And he's failed to realize that you've actually got to finish the damned race first before you can win any of them. And I don't even know how to calculate the amount of points he's lost. I'm sure somebody watching this could do it, or maybe we could do it on that Excel spreadsheet. But he must have thrown away points into the hundreds from just being reckless. And it's been such a wasteful season. It really has. It actually makes me sad thinking about it because Vietti could have been the world champion already, and he's thrown it all away.
Yeah, I mean, you said something very interesting, which brings me to the next point. In order to finish first, you have to finish first, except you're Izan Guevara. But Izan Guevara went from winning a race he didn't even finish in America last year to winning the World Championship, which is absolutely amazing, first of all. And Celestino Vietti, yeah, should take a page out of Izan's book, because he had no mistakes all season and he was just doing himself. And Izan had a mechanical in Argentina and he was taken out in Silverstone. Those are his only two DNFs. And he won the championship now with more than 50 points. And I would argue that Izan Guevara and Celestino Vietti have like the same amount of potential when it comes to speed, you know? As Celestino Vietti showed in Qatar, or as he showed in Catalonia, or as he showed in Argentina, he can do it all. He is so fucking fast. And as well as Izan. Izan is so incredibly fast as well. He's the only one who can break slipstreams in Moto3 for repeatedly break slipstreams in Moto3 and rip apart grooves because he has this pace. But Izan is actually staying on the bike, and he had such an incredible season. It's absolutely amazing, and I'm very happy for him. I think he has a bright future, and the way he did it impresses me so much.
Yeah, it did. First of all, massive congratulations to Izan Guevara. He's just had such a ridiculously good season, like you said, and you do deserve a lot of plaudits. I actually think this was the pick you were most emphatic about at the beginning of the season. You said to me, and you were right, Izan Guevara will win the Moto3 world title. And as you can see from the picture next to me and Leo, he's done it. He's done it with 2 races to go. And that's just a testament to how fucking brilliant Izan Guevara has been. He's been consistent, he's been fast, he's finished. Celestino Vietti, take note, he has finished the races except those that were outside of his control. And that's why he will be holding the trophy in Valencia, because he has finished the races. And look, the future could not be any brighter for Izan Guevara, because it takes a special kind of brilliance to win anything as a rookie and to come into arguably the toughest class in Grand Prix motorcycle racing, Moto3, and really dominate it the way that Izan Guevara has. It takes just such a level of talent, and he deserves all the plaudits in the world because he's been spectacular. He really has. the Gas team have really got a diamond in having him, and he has just been sensational.
Yeah, I mean, the comparison with Pedro is obvious because they raced together in Junior GP. They raced together in Moto3 last season. And they both won the Moto3 World Championship, but in completely different fashion. Pedro last year had an incredible start to the season. He won in Qatar, he won in Portimao, he won in Jerez. And from this point on, he was kind of managing. Pedro was very consistent. He was always fast, but not winning every race. And Izan Guevara, he was incredibly fast and he was winning everything. And he was getting to the front and he was going at it. And it seemed like a little bit the only way to stop Izan Guevara was to battle him, but nobody fucking could. I mean, Ayumu Sasaki and Danny Olgado in Aragon are the best example for Izan Guevara's championship because they followed him and they managed to follow him for the entire race. But Izan had this edge that when you know a thing or two about Moto3, the slipstream is important. And let's say in Aragon, the slipstream helps you with 3 or 4 tenths per lap, let's say. I don't know. And then you go a whole race behind him with 4 tenths every lap, where you're just keeping in touch with him. And then 2 laps before the finish, with 2 laps to go, Izan hits another gear and he's gone. That's how fucking brilliant he is. And I never saw this from Pedro Acosta. Pedro Acosta had a totally different way of dominating, but he didn't have this raw speed in Moto3 that Izan Guevara had. Pedro was more like a monster in battle. When you was going at it with him, you know you're gonna lose. Like Dennis Foggia in both Portimao races, he tried everything, and Darren Binder helped Pedro in the second one massively. But even without Darren Binder, I truly believe Pedro would have won that race because in battle, Pedro is such a motherfucker. He's so incredibly late on the brakes. But Izan Guevara, he just has so incredibly high speeds that nobody can even battle with him. And if you can, okay, cool. But if you can't, he is gone. There's no way. This raw speed reminds me of Jorge Lorenzo and Pecco Bagnaia because he is this fucking fast.
That is just, it's so funny you mention that because that's the point I was about to make actually. Pedro Acosta's domination is akin to Valentino's domination in a way, late on the brakes and just all around just an absolute monster to deal with on the track in terms of sheer one-on-one battling. Izan Guevara's raw speed is a bit like prime Jorge Lorenzo at Yamaha. Gets out in front, just controls the race brilliantly from beginning to end. And even if you do somehow catch him, he cuts you up the inside to death to the point that you're just exhausted. He gets back on the inside time and time and time again. He even goes out on the outside when he needs to. And he just controls races so well and so maturely. And that's why he's a world champion now, because he's able to dictate the flow and the rhythm of the race better than anybody else can. And the fact that he can find this extra gear of speed makes him a real menace for whoever's up against him. I wouldn't want to be that person, but whoever it is, Izan Guevara is going to blow away.
Yeah, and what impresses me even more is that he has such a good structure around him, because he was, as far as I'm concerned, he was racing with Aspar in the European Talent Cup, but I'm not entirely sure. But he for sure was racing with Aspar in the Junior GP. He was racing with Aspar in Moto3 now for 2 seasons, won the World Championship. And by the way, he's the first rider to win the ETC, the Junior GP, and the Moto3. And now he's going up with Aspar again in Moto2. And at some point, except Aspar goes to MotoGP, they will have to break up. But I love it for a young rider to have a good structure where he can develop. Because when, I don't know how old Izan is, I would assume he's like 17, 18, right around this. I would say the same age as Pedro. Pedro's 18 right now. So you develop so much as a young man, from a boy to a man in those years, and we've all been through it. That it's so important to have a good structure, and when your surroundings isn't the best for you, when they don't take you to the side at some point and say, hey, this is not the way to go. This is important if it's your parents, or in this case your team, because when you're racing in the World Championship, this is kind of your parents. And I absolutely love it, and what Gasgas is doing in general. And also I absolutely love the championship celebration, because most of the times championship celebrations are a little bit boring, like, yeah, they get the golden helmet and they get the championship t-shirt, and oh, okay, cool. But Valentino Rossi set like a gold standard for me where nobody else can beat it. Because when you're trying to do something similar like Vale did, you're just copying him, like Jorge Lorenzo early in his career, which is to me a little bit stupid. To just copy Valentino, just do come up with something unique. And but if you're just doing the gold helmet thing, it looks boring compared to Valentino, which is the gold standard, But yeah, not trying to hate on him, but the championship celebration with Nico Tirol was very, very good. I loved it, because he was standing there wondering, okay, who is it? Who is it? That they are about to change helmets, and it's a little bit like the Jorge Lorenzo celebration in Valencia in 2015, and I absolutely loved it. And then Nico Tirol, how they were celebrating with each other. Nico Tirol, the last 125 cc champion, who's taking over from Gino Passori next year as I believe team principal or whatever, or a team boss. I don't know what you want to call it. But yeah, I loved it. It's amazing. And also the helmet has like some details. Check it out on Instagram. It has like some, I don't know how to call it in English, those is it brilliants? Is it stones? Like it's probably some plastic red and shiny looking stones they put in there, but I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, the note in the celebrations, you're absolutely correct. It was just genuinely, it was brilliant to see, and it was more than worth it. Oh yeah, I see what you mean. I'm just looking at Izan Guevara's gold helmet here. I'm gonna get a picture up and pray that I don't get copyright struck by MotoGP Dorna. Without them, this would not be possible, as we say. Bear with just a second. I'll get a picture up so people know what I'm talking about. This is the helmet that Leo is referring to, the championship helmet. I think those are rhinestones. I think
I
that's
don't
the
know.
design. I think that's what they are. So yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, Izan Guevara just deserves so much credit. And the point you made about the structure around him is one of my favorite points that you made there. Having this sort of loving, nurturing environment, KTM, that structure is what riders need in order to reach the heights that they do. The Gas garage has been brilliant for Izan Guevara. The IO garage for Remy and for Pedro last year, they showed that as well. Having those people that believe in you and who will take you aside when you need taken aside and explain things to you in that way. Again, KTM, you need those people in your life, especially when you're traveling around the world in the paddock. And you made another really good point. A lot of these guys are like 17, 18, 19, and, their mum and dad can't be there. Their family can't be there for every race, as you just said. So it's so important to have that mentor figure or those team mentor figures around you to nurture and develop your talent in that proper way. And it's clear that's what Izan Guevara has at the Gas team, and they deserve to take as much of a bow as he does because they've clearly managed him perfectly. And long may it continue. They seem to be a really good bunch, and they've done the perfect job.
Yeah, I mean, Aki Ayo is basically the same but different. And I love what he's doing with Pedro. I love what he did with Raul Fernandez. because this is the way to go. And it's so unfortunate that KTM is ruining all of Ayu's work when they go to MotoGP. And I hope so hard that Pedro won't go to KTM, and I hope that he didn't sign a contract already, which would tie him to KTM for further the next year. Yeah, but yeah. Regarding the structure, they're doing well. They're succeeding with Pedro. They're succeeding with Gasgas, and it's a little bit sad that Sergio Garcia will leave. But okay, it is what it is. Maybe it's the change he needed from Izan as his teammate, because I can imagine that it's quite difficult. But yeah, Sergio Garcia seems like a little bit more of a quieter and a little bit more mature young man. So yeah, maybe he will succeed at Pons. I hope so. And regarding Pons, I believe we forgot something big during the Moto2 race, because unfortunately we had this horrific situation where Jorge Navarro was coming out of turn 4. His rear slided away. He wasn't high-sided, he just low-sided from the rear onwards. And Simone Corsi, unfortunately, totally ran him over. And he was lying there directly beside the track for 3 laps, where everybody was passing him, and even the leaders, and there were no red flags. The marshals were signaling with their hands like stop the race. I would interpret it this way. And I don't know what the fuck race direction is doing, because to me, watching the crash live, it looked like to me that Jorge Navarro was paralyzed because he couldn't get up. Fortunately, it's just a broken femur, which in this instant is like the best case scenario, and apparently he's good. I hope it stays this way. And with the recent death in the motorcycle community, which are absolutely horrific, we had Victor Steeman in SSP 300. We had, I forgot his name, Chrissy Rouse, I believe, in BSB. Yeah. And we had someone in the German championship as well who died. In a short period of time, 3 riders from the motorcycle community died, which is absolutely horrendous. First of all, but second of all, when you are in motorcycle racing and you have this happened in the last few weeks, and then a situation where a rider is lying there right next to the track, marshals are standing there. I don't want, because if one crash like this can happen, 2 can happen. What if someone had 1 lap, 2 laps later, the same crash Jorge Navarro had, and the bike flew into a marshal or into Navarro? You don't want to imagine what could have happened. And it's utterly disgusting that race direction, once again, is so incredibly incompetent that they can't fucking red flag the session when they red flag the session for some fucking birds, which in my opinion was the right decision, because you don't want those birds inside your motorcycle. This can end badly. But you know what can end badly too? When a motorcycle flies into a marshal or in another rider lying on the ground. I'm in loss for words, and I believe those people who are responsible for this, A, need to get fired, and B, need to get punished for I don't know the correct legal term. I know it in my language, but it's wait a minute, let me Google it.
Negligence?
Could be, I have no idea.
What's the German word?
Grob fahrlässig.
Sounds pretty similar.
Okay. Grossly negligent. Grossly negligent. Yeah, you were right. And I don't I don't know what the fuck they're doing. It frustrates me so much. And because you didn't even know what the fuck happened to him. You didn't know if he was paralyzed, if maybe he could have died there. The motorcycle was hitting him right in his lower back. It looks so horrible. And all they fucking did was post the video on Twitter.
And they fucking replayed it.
I mean, the replay, okay, cool. Because as a fan, I don't necessarily like to see crashes because I think it's funny, but I like to see crashes to know and understand what happened. You know? Therefore, I kind of like the replays, not in a sensational way. They're like, oh my God, look, they crashed. Let's post this on Twitter. Let's do this. Let's do that. But I like it to understand what happened, because usually in the broadcast you don't see it, and if just somebody is lying there, you kind of want to understand what happened. But yeah, that's just my perspective on this. I can totally understand everybody who says we shouldn't show those replays at all. But yeah, that's a different topic. I simply don't understand what the hell was going on with the race direction, and it's such a big issue in MotoGP. I mean, if you fuck it up with Fabio and Izan and give him a long lap penalty, okay, cool. It's just you're incompetent, but you're not hurting anybody. You're maybe taking money out of his pocket if he doesn't win the championship by this, but at the end of the day, nobody is seriously hurt by your incompetence. But this today could have ended very badly, and I'm so happy that it didn't. I don't know whose fault it was, if maybe the marshals didn't communicate with the race direction properly, I don't know. But when you see it on the broadcast, one lap afterwards, you should immediately red flag it. When you see a rider lying there and the marshal waving into the camera with his arms like, stop the fucking race, then stop the fucking race. I don't know what the hell is going on, and it's so disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, although tragic as it was, I'm glad you mentioned Chrissy Rice and Victor Steeman. Obviously, our thoughts are very much with them and with the motorcycling community as a whole. It was beyond heartbreaking. You know, it's always heartbreaking to have one loss, but to have two in such a short period of time is just devastating. And I truly wish well their loved ones and their colleagues and their friends as well, because it's so terrible to have that kind of thing happen. And I truly hope they find some way to eventually find peace and recover from that. And as for Jorge Navarro, what in the fuck are race direction? This is the thing, and you just made a really good point there. I can handle race directions and competence whenever it just comes to messing up a race or messing up someone's title opportunities. What I cannot handle is race directions gross negligence, in that someone's life might have been lost today and you did nothing about it because you just weren't aware that it was happening. Jorge Navarro was lying on the side of the most dangerous turn on that track, turn 4, for 3 full fucking laps, and you did nothing. You didn't red flag it. You didn't send out a notification over the sound system. You didn't give them anything. And those marshals, like you said, they were given the sign to stop. Like, even in pro wrestling, if you see that sign, that means someone is seriously hurt and they cannot keep going. How you did not see this and why you did nothing is beyond my understanding. I mean, how many more fucking times have we got to see someone die before race direction will get halfway competent about this? How many more fatalities, how many serious injuries do we have to see before they'll step in and do the right thing? I mean, I'm all for mocking Dorna respectfully and for mocking race direction in a funny way. But I do not find this funny. I do not think it's humorous, and I do not think it's clever. And I think race direction should consider themselves extremely lucky that Jorge Navarro, something much worse did not happen to him today. like you said, he suffered a broken femur, and that's the best possible outcome from that. I do not blame the marshals. I certainly don't blame Simone Corsi because there's nothing either of those parties could have done. They did all they could. But to see what was happening and to just post it to social media and not red flag the race when someone was potentially critically injured, fucking shame on you, race direction. That's all I'm going to say. Shame on you for that because you have a responsibility to your riders to do better and to protect them, not to hurt them.
Yeah. The rider in Germany who died was Leon Langstettler. So this is the third one in the last period of times. And how bad would it look if, let's say, Jorge Navarro indeed was paralyzed? If you saw the replay, I mean, it's on Twitter, go check it out. If you saw the replay, the front tire was hitting Jorge Navarro exactly in his lower back. And I thought, okay, the protector can't absorb all of the input. Something has broken there. That's my immediate thought.
It must
Because
have.
he couldn't get up for 3 laps. It's it's a disaster. But how bad would it look right now if he indeed was paralyzed? They didn't red flag the session, and all they did was put the fucking video on YouTube. It's like, imagine if they put not on YouTube, on Twitter, I'm sorry. Imagine if they did the same with Marco Simoncelli or with Jason Dupasky. What the fuck
Jesus
is wrong?
Christ.
What the fuck is wrong with them? I don't understand it. And I think those people responsible should A, lose their job, and B, be punished, because this could have ended very, very badly. And try to explain someone's wife. I mean, Jorge Navarro, he has a wife. And try to explain Michelle Neukirchen why the hell her husband is lying there and potentially being paralyzed or whatever, you don't know. Let's imagine this for a second, because Jorge Navarro got really lucky. Try to explain it to her that my theory is that they did it because of TV times. They thought, we can't afford to have a delay on the session, and therefore they didn't red flag the session. That's my opinion. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's about money, as everything in MotoGP is, and it's not about rider safety. It's like the huge topic I discussed with Joel Kelso on the podcast when we talked was what is going on with Moto3 and how to improve it. And yeah, we were talking about the age limit, and you should check it out. But it's like the same again. What are they doing for the riders? And we've been calling for a riders union now extensively since Austria, when they came up with sprint races. But those are also things that, if your safety commission, Matty Scordia had a great tweet about it. If your safety commission is your riders or your riders unity, whatever Camilo called it, and it's not working, it's not really riders unity, you know. Let me check out what exactly she said. But yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. I can't wrap my head around it, how you can be so fucking incompetent.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say. I mean, like you said, Jorge Navarro has a wife, he has a family. How the fuck do how do you look at her in the face and explain if something happens to him because you were so callous that you wouldn't do anything, or that you were so just caring about other things that you couldn't do it? I'm just I am genuinely appalled by what I saw, or more importantly, didn't see from the safety commission. I think it was absolutely, I mean, abhorrent and vile, and vile does just doesn't even do it justice. The fact that they were so callous in letting him just lie there for 3 full laps. I mean, I'll end up saying something I regret, so I guess I'm better saying nothing, but it's just unforgivable. And those involved should just at best lose their jobs for that.
Yeah, I found a tweet, And she said, quote unquote, the safety commission is a riders union. And then she said, well, your safety commission isn't doing a very good fucking job then, is it? I'm so angry and I don't have the words to describe what I'm feeling more than anger. But this shit simply can't go on. What the actual fuck? And this sums it up very well by Maddie. So yeah, I don't understand it. I hope the riders get together and sort this shit out, because when you go to the NFL, they have a players association, the NBA has one, and basically the UFC needs one as well. And yeah, it should not happen. But if those types of crash happen, everything else should get put on hold, and the responsible rider in this case should get treated properly. And even if you can't do anything for him, you should have the respect for the rider to at least red flag the session and put his health and his safety, on the marshal's safety as well, as a top priority. But because this looks bad, even though nothing happened, you could argue, yeah, but nothing happened,
It's
so
not the
you didn't need to
point.
red. Yeah, that's not the point. Exactly. It looks bad, and it diminishes the respect towards the rider who's lying there next to the track and the marshals who are risking their lives in this situation to help this rider.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I just cannot, I'll never understand it. I really don't. I mean, like, these riders, they ride to be the best of what they do, but they also ride to entertain us and to give us the sport that we love. And to treat them so callously and disrespectfully when clearly he's seriously hurt, it's just reprehensible. That's really all it is.
Yeah. But I would like to finish this podcast on a positive note, because we were talking about Moto3, and thank God nothing happened in Moto2, and therefore we can sleep a little better. But going back to Moto3, Joel Kelso had an absolute banger of a race. I was so happy for him, and that's very smart of you to reduce your sound. So yeah. He had a very, very good race. And let's be honest, he didn't have the speed of Izan Guevara today. He's a rookie, first time in Phillip Island on the Moto3, and you see it all season that he doesn't have the speed yet to fight for the victory. But he rode out of his skin today. He rode like Alex Rins, like the devil, because he was trying everything to keep in touch with the front group. And this is basically all you need in Moto3, because then he was in a situation where he was in the top 8 and the 9th guy was 4 seconds behind him. So you could say, okay, I would take it easy right now. I don't have to fight with 20 riders in my home GP, you know? And he was doing incredibly well at the start of the race. He had a very, very smart and calculated race. He was properly aggressive, but not David Munoz-like aggressive. So yeah, I'm very happy for him this is a very positive homecoming for Joel Kelso, and I certainly believe that Joel will pick up some speed, and maybe Bristol GP suits him better. Who knows? I mean, we saw last week with the Tom Booth, or 2 weeks ago with the Tom Booth Amos video, what the hell is going on with CIP. And yeah, update, the mechanic is now fired after the Malaysian GP, which I don't understand why it has or why it should be after the Malaysian and not immediately, but okay. And yeah, but hopefully Joel can channel his junior GP form a little bit more, where he was beating Danny Algado in multiple races, and we all know how good Danny Algado is. And yeah, he showed promising signs this season. Joel showed some promising signs this season, even though he was extremely unlucky. This makes it even more sweeter that that he has this very, very positive end to the season, which hopefully he can carry back into the winter break. And let's hope in Malaysia he can do a good race again. And Valencia, of course, he had this incredibly good race last year in the Junior GP, where I believe he started from last place or something and won the race. Incredibly good there. So I'm rooting for him. He's a very, very kind guy. He's the best. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm really happy. What pissed me off that the transponder wasn't working. So every time he wasn't in camera and his name was dropping down the order, I got a little heart attack. I was even mocking my girlfriend a little bit because when she didn't pay whole attention, I was like, "Oh my God, Joel!" And then she looked, and then the name was going down. So she's like, "Fuck." Yeah, yeah,
Oh
but
my God.
yeah, I'm very happy for him. He rode an extremely good race.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get on to you giving your girlfriend a heart attack, let's talk about Joel Kelso because that was brilliant. Actually, before I get on to Joel Kelso, I'm glad you mentioned Tom Booth Amos because that was another controversy since we've been away. If I was Tom Booth Amos, I'd have headbutted that motherfucker with my helmet on, and we'd have seen if he was big enough to do it then. He should have Zinedine Zidane, that prick. But violence aside, and thankfully that prick's lost his job anyway. Joel Kelso, absolutely fantastic. I am so happy for Joel Kelso that he's got such a great result. First result in the top 10, and it's at his home in Phillip Island. I am I'm so happy for him because the guy, he's always kept his head up. He's always been positive, and he's shown that he can find that speed if he has enough belief in himself. And it was really, really good. Like you said, he rode like the devil all race, which was an excellent comparison to Alex Rins. And he's proven that he's more than good enough and more than fast enough to hang with the top of the grid as well. So overall, really, really happy for Joel. I really look forward to seeing him kicking on and developing even more good results from this. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with Prustel next year as well, because I think with this speed, he can really do good things. I really think he could be a very serious rider next year.
Yeah. And let's be honest, in Moto3, we have this age limit now. So we are in a kind of weird period where less talent is coming through, where like a couple of years ago, or even like this year, you had rookies who are, or is the age limit from this season on or next season on? I don't know. I believe it's next season.
I think it's next season.
Okay, yeah. Doesn't matter because not as many people are coming up. So if you're in a situation where the good people who are in Moto3 right now, like Dennis Foggia, Izan Guevara, and Sergio Garcia are moving up to Moto2, and not as many talented riders are coming up, the possibility of winning a little bit more maybe is there. So I hope that like Joel or Colin Vaya even, they can capitalize on it next season. And yeah, I'm very happy for them, happy that Joel is in a German team now. So yeah, let's see what we can do with paddock passes.
Absolutely. Come on, Joel. We can see you winning the title in 2 years because the pool is thinning out. This is it. But yeah, you're right. Going to a German team as well. I mean, I know Joel Kelso's your boy already, but especially now being in a German team, it's brilliant.
Oh Lord, the dog is barking.
Peanut,
Yeah, let's get her. Wait a second.
peanut, peanut, peanut.
Okay, I have her.
Peanut,
Hello. Hello.
peanut, peanut. Good to have you back in the podcast.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird with the background, and Also, she doesn't like cuddling as much as I do, but fortunately, I'm the stronger one of us two, so she has to endure it.
Jesus. Leo or Peanut, good to have you back on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, the mascot of the Bad MotoGP podcast, Peanut, once again, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. You want to go? Or you want to stay? No, she wants to go. But at least she shuts the fuck up. You know what my favorite dog meme of all time is? My favorite dog meme is, yeah, we'll let her out. Wait a second. My favorite dog meme of all time is there's a picture of like a crying dog, and above it there's a text where it's like dog is protecting its owner from life-threatening danger, and owner shut the fuck up.
My favorite dog meme of all time is, I'll actually send it to you later. There's a picture of a man and his dog working underneath their car, a bit like you in your 3 Series, by the way. Shout out Leo's BMW 3 Series. And both of them are on, those sort of like skateboard type things that you lie on to work underneath the car. And it's the dog saying, or it's the owner saying to the dog, "Did you put the car in bark?" And the dog saying, "No, it's not the fucking time, Dave." It's the best meme ever created. That is you and Peanut, basically.
Okay, yeah, except that Peanut is absolutely useless. She's cute, but she's useless.
Oh my god. A bit like
Yeah,
race direction.
yeah, but race direction isn't cute. They're just useless.
They don't even have the looks to justify it.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, I think we covered all of the Australian GP, or did we miss something?
I think we covered all of it.
Yeah, so it was a great episode as well. Now a little bit more freestyle. I think once we got our groove, it worked very well. So next time out is Malaysia, which begs the question, will we have some championships decided in Malaysia? What do you think?
Maybe. I think it's very possible that the Premier Class title gets decided. I think if Fabio has one more slip up, that's just it, and Pecco's the champion. But if Fabio can perform the mother of all comebacks, maybe we go to Valencia undecided. I would prefer that, but I think in terms of your question, it's very, very possible.
I mean, I won't go to Valencia this year. I went last year, and Valencia is the perfect track for fans and championship design because you see all of it. It's so good. Valencia gets a lot of shit, but if you're a fan going to Valencia for a championship decider, there's basically no better track. I mean, the track in itself, yeah, it's not the most entertaining, it's not Phillip Island, but for the fan experience, it's so incredibly good, and you see the whole track. And especially last year with Remy, it was crazy good because you saw from our perspective, we were like at turn 6, it's like turn 1, and it comes to the kind of hairpin, turn 2, then it goes into this kind of omega, and then it comes back out again where Alex Rins crashed, obviously. Where Alex Rins
Obviously.
crashed last year, that's exactly where we sat, so I can recommend it to everybody. And you can see the whole track there,
I bet
especially
you can't recommend it to Alex Rins, can you?
this season should be better with a little bit more horsepower underneath his ass. So yeah, I can totally recommend it because you could spot everything, like, okay, Raul is there, Remy is there, what's his place? So you start counting, and yeah, it's amazing. It's such a great track, and I hope we get some championship deciders there, because, or at least one. I like the way last season played out, where we had Misano, Portimao, and Valencia. And Portimao, I was there too live last year. It's it's a cool track, but I you aren't in as close to the racing as you are in Valencia, obviously, but Jerez as well is better, or Austria is much better, because in Portimao you're just at one segment of the track. So we had to stream the whole race on our phones to see what was going on at the rest of the track. And yeah, the big screens were absolutely useless because we had the sun in our back and the big screen right in front of us. So the sun was making the big screen completely white, so we didn't see a fucking thing. And yeah, so this was a little bit unfortunate for the championship decider in Portimao in Moto3, but I like the way it played out with Misano, Portimao, and Valencia, and I hope that we get it as well, because it adds a little bit more excitement, I feel like, and it makes the championship a little bit more special, because I can imagine if, for example, if the MotoGP championship was decided today, we wouldn't be talking as much about Izan Guevara, you know, so everybody gets his 50 minutes of fame, and that's good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. That makes a lot of sense, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah. Okay, so I could see definitely one of the two championships getting decided, but it would need a big fuck up, especially in Moto2, because let's say Ayagura wins, whereas Augusto Fernandez, he's like 5 points, 6 points, 7 points down, something along the line. And yeah, so he would have to crash again. But in MotoGP, I could see it, because Pecco, if he wins the race, he has like 14 points now. He needs 6 and 5, 11. He needs 11 points. If Fabio finishes fourth and Pecco wins, he's champion. I could see this happening.
Yeah, it's very possible. It's very, very possible.
Yeah. Okay, so we will see each other in a week after the Malaysian GP, the last race which fucks our sleep cycle.
The lack of sleep continues.
Yeah, especially when UFC 280 with Charlie Olives and Islam
Let's
is
go.
right around the corner. I'm looking forward so hard. What's your prediction there?
Oh boy. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna say I think Charles Oliveira fourth round submission.
I think Charles Oliveira knocks out Islam Makhachev.
That's a good pick. I like that. I like that. What about Sean O'Malley and Piotr Jan?
I'm thinking Sean O'Malley.
Really?
Yeah, and let me
Oh,
explain why. You know, I'm pretty tall, and when I fight, I like to fight behind my jab and behind my front kick, because I like
you've
to set to get this distance. And I am no way as close as I'm not close to 10% of Sean O'Malley, because Sean O'Malley is an incredibly good striker and Peter Yan is an incredibly good boxer. And I feel like that the length of Sean O'Malley helps Peter to, and not helps Peter, is a disadvantage to Peter, because it's one thing to be long, it's another thing to fight long. And I believe that that Sean O'Malley will do it, and Peter Yan will have to have a lot of distance to cover. So
that's
yeah,
true.
and Sean O'Malley is a very, very solid fighter walking backwards, and I could see him picking Peter Yan apart from the distance while walking back, like not like the Montinho fight, because that would be disrespectful to Peter, but something in this direction I could see happening, you know, not as dominant. I can see Sean O'Malley getting tested, and I could see them going to the ground, which would be interesting to see how Sean O'Malley is there. But I definitely see Sean O'Malley winning, because he has some weird KO power.
Oh yeah.
It's not like he's a Francis Ngannou, but for some reason he has this weird KO power where a straight right comes and then you're down. So yeah, I could see Sean O'Malley winning.
Interesting. I like it a lot. I look forward to discussing these on the next episode as well.
Yeah. What's your opinion to TJ and Elja?
Well, I hate TJ because he's a drug using cheat. But Aljamain Sterling he's a really, really good fighter. I have to say he really is. I saw him hanging out with Andrew Tate in Abu Dhabi earlier, so that's interesting. But in terms of the actual fight, I think Aljo's got too much for TJ. I think TJ's lost half a step, especially after the Corey Sandhagen fight. And I think Aljo's just going to be too good. I see either a decision for Aljamain Sterling or a late TKO stoppage.
I could see a submission.
Yeah,
From the
is
back
possible as well.
From the back, Aljo is very good on the back. And I feel like Aljo is getting very, very much disrespect from the MMA community for his first Peter fight. And his second Peter fight was very close as well. And a lot of people had the first round going to Peter. But yeah, I think he's extremely underappreciated. And if you rewatch the Corey Sandhagen fight, then you know what's up with Aljo. He is fucking good. And I could see him submitting TJ. And fun fact about TJ, apparently he has always a period of 5 fights in his career where he wins 4 fights and loses the next one. And now he's on a 4-fight winning streak. So he's always 4-1, and then again 4-1, then again 4-1. So it's the statistics, it's the law.
It is a sign.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll be very interested in discussing these after the fight with you, and of course discussing the Malaysian GP. So we will see each other in a week. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and goodbye.